Welcome to the 700 Club, and thanks for joining us. Let's go over to the CBN News Desk for today's top stories.
Thanks, Gordon. Chicago police say they have a person of interest in custody in the mass shooting at a 4th of July parade Monday. 6 people were killed and dozens more wounded in the Independence Day attack. CBN's Matt Galka has the latest.
The panic and the terror on full display during 4th of July celebrations in Illinois. You can hear what sounded like never-ending gunfire as 6 people were killed and dozens more were hurt in Highland Park during a daytime 4th of July parade. Panicked parents did anything they could to try and protect their children.
When the shot stopped again is when we decided we had to run, so we started shooting again. And we ran behind the building, and I put my son in a dumpster.
And I just looked back at my dad, and right behind him, this girl just fell in cold blood and just died.
Police say a gunman started firing into the crowd of parade watchers at around 10 a.m., turning the Independence Day celebration into a mass shooting. The FBI is helping to investigate how and why the suspect started firing from a rooftop in the Chicago suburb. He then managed to get away during the chaos. Police identified Robert E. Cremo III as a person of interest following the shooting, and he was taken into custody Monday evening after a brief chase by police.
These are the kinds of injuries that are seen in war. And these poor kids and families who went to a parade and then, now they, people just don't feel you can go anywhere.
The devastating scene at the parade showed the aftermath of what was meant to be a celebration of families and freedom. Victims being treated range from children to senior citizens, anywhere from 8 to 85. The tragedy led some towns around the country to cancel their festivities out of fear and caution.
There are no words for the kind of evil that shows up at a public celebration of freedom, hides on a roof, and shoots innocent people with an assault rifle.
But the show went on in Philadelphia, where another shooting sent a crowd of thousands into a frenzy. Police say 2 officers were hit while working security during the concert and fireworks event. Authorities baffled about where the gunfire came from. Both officers were released from the hospital overnight. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Turning now to the travel troubles millions of Americans experienced over the holiday weekend. Chaotic scenes at airports as they struggle to cope with a high volume of travelers. Airlines canceled about 1,000 flights and nearly 9,000 were delayed Friday and Saturday. Weather and staffing shortages were the main problem. The troubles eased Sunday and Monday, and most made it home with no problems. Friday saw the biggest crowd since the pandemic began. TSA reported screening about 2.5 million people. Security checks can slow down travelers trying to make their flights, but advances in technology might change that, all while increasing national security. Caitlin Burke has this look at what's being called the TSA of the future.
The terror attacks of September 11th meant an immediate change in air travel, but enhanced security measures evolved over time.
Unfortunately, there's continued to have events that happen. You had the underwear bomber, which changed the way we looked at people screening, and all of a sudden body scanners became the norm. You had the shoe bomber. So there's all these events that took place, and so there's a lot of a reactive approach to it.
By being proactive, however, the TSA and its partners have worked to stay ahead of potential threats.
We need to continuously be innovative, and we need to continuously come up with new methods of improving security. We have to keep coming up with new methods of doing it, because our adversaries are also continuously looking at new ways to defeat what they know we have.
Kannan Krishnaswamy works at the U.S. Department of Energy's Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. One of its missions is national security, and researchers are behind many of the screening technology in airports today.
The portals that you go through with your hands above your head, that came out of the laboratory. In fact, we lovingly at the laboratory, we call this the PNNL salute.
Those scanners use millimeter wave technology.
That technology, the basic technology and the basic invention came out in the 1990s. We've had that system or that technology available since the 1990s. Now, there was no real need for commercial deployment or deployment in the airports because airport security at that time was very different.
Then 9/11 catapulted millimeter wave technology to the forefront of national security.
So that's the older generation of the technology that is currently being sold even today at the airports.
And now a second-generation millimeter wave system is close to being deployed.
The way HexWave works is, first of all, it's a walk-through portal, and it uses radio frequency and real-time 3D video rate imaging, so we can determine if an individual has a threat on their body. We've trained it to ignore some of the common benign objects, so you won't have to divest. So your phone, your keys, your belt, wallet, watches, glass cases.
Bill Frayne, the CEO of Liberty Defense, which developed HexWave, says the key differentiator between it and existing technologies is the ability to detect non-metallic threats.
And as you know, the people trying to do and defeat the system to do harm, they're being more creative. They're using 3D plastic guns, they're using liquid explosives.
Liberty has also licensed a shoe scanning technology from PNNL that can be used inside the HexWave or existing body scanners.
Imagine if you didn't have to take your shoes off at the airport. Talk about, passenger experience. That's probably top of the list when we talk to people who are going through the airports.
While this scanning tech is a few years away, the HexWave system will soon be deployed to screen aviation workers who access secure areas of airports. After that, the goal is for it to be used at all security checkpoints, allowing travelers to pass through without breaking stride.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Protecting freedom is a bedrock principle of America's foundation. The U.S. Supreme Court recently issued several rulings preserving religious freedom. While America is founded on this fundamental right, it also promotes freedom of religion worldwide. As Jennifer Wishon reports, an international coalition met in our nation's capital recently to help stop the rising tide of religious persecution around the globe.
Here in the nation's capital, there are few issues that unite both ends of the political spectrum. One is the life-changing work of ending religious persecution around the globe. Billions live where their ability to worship is restricted or forbidden, from genocide in China to Nigeria, where church bombings are all too routine.
If you don't have religious freedom around the world for everybody, every time, all the time, and governments enforce that, you are going to have the clash of civilizations.
Each year, Washington becomes the focal point for work toward a world where all people can worship without fear. Victim stories are heartbreaking.
My name is Yu Han. I came from China, Beijing.
Yu Han's father was killed for practicing Falun Gong. When her family finally got access to his body, they were shocked.
The incision stretched from his throat all the way down to his abdomen. And when they pressed his abdomen, they found that the incision, his abdomen was stuffed with hard ice. Then my father's organ had been harvested while he was still alive. I cannot imagine, I couldn't imagine what he had suffered before he died.
There's too many stories that are never been told and no one know about them. There's so many people are suffering.
Persecution survivor Maryam Ibrahim recounts her story in the new book Shackled, one woman's dramatic triumph over persecution, gender abuse, and a death sentence. Ibrahim says she felt led to share God's will.
Because the only thing I did, I accept that will, and I continue trusting God during the trial, imprisonment, and knowing that I count my days before I get executed, knowing that I'll never be able to see my children again. And now, coming out of that situation, every day I wake up with a miracle in my life, being able to get my children ready for the school, to prepare their lunch, and to do what I do today is all His work.
U.S. law requires the Commission on International Religious Freedom to maintain a list of prisoners of conscience around the world.
The most important thing is to put a human face on the tragedy.
Rabbi Cooper says hateful anti-Semitism taught in parts of the Middle East has been exported to the West via social media. He points to recent efforts by Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, based in Vermont, to boycott the Jewish state of Israel.
These are people more at home with Hamas than with American or American values.
And while the summit is focused on persecution abroad, victims urge Americans to guard their freedoms.
Liberty is taken away incrementally. It's not all at once. In most cases, it's not overnight.
They say America must remain a beacon for the world.
They look to our principles to say, well, here's a country that's getting it right when it comes to freedom. That's something that we can't lose hold of.
Rabbi Cooper says there's a sleeping giant in America that could change millions of lives.
If you can get every church in the U.S. to adopt one church in Nigeria, just one church, church to church, people to people, things will change there very quickly. Because if we wait for governments to figure this out, we're just going to keep reading over and over again about the body count of the faithful going up.
And now the work continues to change policies that are hurting so many. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
You can get the latest from CBN News at our website, cbnnews.com.